So I'm in the gym every day, whether it's working out myself or doing consultation with coaching clients. And I've come to notice that 99% of men specifically face the same problems whenever you start going to the gym and want to build muscle and lose fat. And when it comes to that, there are just a few key issues that discourage, overwhelm, and often stop them from ever reaching their goals. Now, I've probably seen a lot of those videos where people say things like, you gotta get a workout plan, you gotta start with a friend for the motivation, and you gotta make sure you start your leg sessions with squat. I think that on the psychological side, there's something missing. Not a lot of people are talking about that. And that's why today I'm going to talk about the 4 biggest mistakes that most men make outside of the gym when it comes to transform their physique. So most guys start with a burst of motivation. They're being led by a burst of motivation. And that's the first mistake. Don't get me wrong. Motivation is great, but my point is that you should not rely on it. Motivation is just one of the built-in systems that your brain has designed in order to drive you towards action. But it's not the only one, and most importantly, it's not the most reliable one. So here's the thing. Motivation is something your brain gives you when you set a goal and you're excited about the results. But if you tried building the habit of going to the gym before, or any other habit for that matter, you've probably noticed that motivation fades after a little while. That is to be expected because, again, it isn't built to last. Motivation is just designed to give you a quick burst of energy when your brain thinks you'll be able to quickly get this reward that you're seeking. And the problem here when it comes to the gym is with the timeline. Going to the gym takes time if you want to see the results, much longer than your brain actually expects. And as soon as your brain understands that, after a few weeks, it will start giving you less and less motivation because the results aren't immediate or obvious. Because the last thing that your brain wants to do is to waste energy on something that may not pay off in the short term. Because evolutionary speaking, doesn't make sense to think about improving your quality of life or longevity when the average life for a person is like 27 years old. That's where the trick is. Everybody wants to see results, but very few are willing to trust the process long enough to actually get those results. This is why most people quit after a few weeks and will never, unfortunately, achieve the physique that they want. Because it's not hard. It's not complicated. It's just not immediate. That's it. And most people struggle a lot with that. And if you just understand that, you're already ahead of most people that are convinced that they'll get lean and jacked in 2 weeks. But here's what will save your day. Motivation is not the only system that can push you toward your goals. You have a second built-in system, and that's willpower. Willpower is mental strength that helps you make the right decision and keep acting toward your goal, even in the face of temptations. It's that, that voice in your head that keeps telling you, you have to go to the gym, you have to get up, even if you're half asleep on the couch watching anime. Everybody has willpower, and it's incredibly powerful. The only issue with it is that it's highly limited though. So if you really have to be careful not to waste it on things that don't matter as much. And I talk about that in depth in a previous video, which I'm going to link in the description. But willpower becomes essential when motivation fades. On days when you don't feel motivated, you need to push yourself. You need to use willpower. Now, once going to the gym becomes a habit, then everything becomes much easier and less demanding because it's automatic. By definition, a habit means it's second nature. But until then, you need to use motivation when it's there and willpower when it's not there to build the habit of going to the gym. Now, the second most common error that I see people make is to think that the only thing that matters is the training, the gym in itself, and therefore they underestimate the importance of the rest. You don't make gains in the gym. It's quite the opposite, actually. In the gym, you exhaust your muscles, giving them a solid reason to grow when you're done. Myself included, when I started, I thought that training is the only thing that mattered, and that the rest of things like sleep and nutrition, those couldn't be as important as the training part. And my theory about that is that we tend to take sleep and nutrition for granted. But training is something that you actively add to your life. It's not something that usually was in part of your life previously. So that's why you're deliberate about building your physique when it comes to going to the gym. The problem is that sleep and nutrition are more embedded habits that you've been cultivating your whole life. Well, if you're alive, you've probably been sleeping and eating, right? Which makes those habits harder to tweak and harder to optimize for muscle growth. But that mistake cost me, I think, years of, I'm going to call it mediocre progress, but I wasn't eating enough food and I was undersleeping for quite a long time. This is crucial. And again, you need not to make that same mistake because there's nothing complicated about improving your sleep consistency or the quality of your nutrition. The trap is thinking that just because you sleep and eat every day, you must be doing it right. And for example, when it comes to nutrition specifically, when you first start, you need to focus on 3 things. Yes, that's 3. The consistency of your meals structure, which means that you have a clear plan about what you're going to eat in advance and prep the food in advance if you need to. That way you'll get rid of all the poor food decisions making that you're doing when you're really hungry and really tired and really stressed out. Second is the amount of calories that you're consuming in a day. And the third one is the amount of protein that you're eating. And from my consultation with clients, I've noticed that most men don't eat enough protein when they first come to see me, and they're consuming way too many calories while following a chaotic diet structure because they don't have the time and they're stressed most of the time. So nutrition is like not a priority. And when it comes to sleep, most people think that it's just about getting those 7 to 9 hours of sleep, But in reality, it's much more about the quality and the consistency of your sleep rather than the number of hours that you're spending in bed. Because most of you watching are probably not hitting the quantity guidelines. So I doubt the fact that quality of your sleep is where it needs to be if you truly want your body to be in the best condition for muscle growth and fat loss. And you simply cannot underestimate these factors. Even if your training is perfect, if your protein intake is insufficient and your sleeping schedule is just chaotic, your body just won't be able to at least maximize muscle growth, but I'd say realistically to just, regenerate itself. Now, I'm convinced that the third mistake is to watch too much fitness content when you're first starting. Because I firmly believe that watching too much fitness content can distort your sense of reality, create unrealistic expectations, and prevent you from being satisfied with the progress you're making. Now, I'm not saying that fitness content is bad, because honestly, that would be me being a hypocrite. But what I'm saying is you got to be careful. You got to be mindful of what you're watching, what you're consuming, because your brain doesn't really make the difference between what's on the screen and what's in real life. And if you spend all your time watching, Larry Will's PRs every 2 days, C-bomb competitions and throwbacks of, Arnold. It's easy to walk in the gym and feel like you're too skinny, underdeveloped, and dissatisfied with your own progress. As the more you're being exposed to something, the more normal it becomes to your brain. That's why if you spend your time scrolling through social media, watching reels of highly muscular and possibly enhanced people, it will be almost impossible to feel content with your own journey. And I'm telling you this because it's the way I've felt before. I felt like I wasn't making progress at all. I felt like I had bad genetics. I felt like I was lazy, not pushing myself hard enough during my trainings because I thought I had to exactly do what those guys were doing and look like those guys too. But in reality, you're just playing a different game. Those people are there to entertain most of the time. And sometimes they're here to educate, depending on the content. But it's not really about them. It's really about you and what you want to do and what your body is capable of doing at this point in time. And that loops back to a more important point, which is that the only healthy comparison to keep is the one with yourself. Social comparison is most of the time more harmful than it is good when it comes to your body image. And one thing I've learned over and over again from working with clients is that everyone's journey is very different. Some people struggle with consistency. Some people doubt themselves and therefore they just don't increase the weights. Some people just can't get to, eat right. Their journey you're on is hard enough without spending hundreds of hours watching fitness content that leaves you underwhelmed and self-deceived about your own progress because you're comparing yourself to people who have been doing this for decades. And again, what I'm saying is that you should not stop watching all fitness content altogether, the key is to be intentional about what you consume and to make sure that after watching this content, you feel better, more informed, and more motivated than you were before watching it. Now, last but not least, you're probably focusing way too much on results, which is actually limiting your progress. So let's talk about expectations and results, because this is something that will concern you at every stage, whether it's your first week at the gym or if you've been at it for months. There's a dangerous game most beginners play, is that they don't focus on improving, they have a ton of vision on getting results and speeding the process as much as possible. But you're not sprinting a 100-meter race here. We're working on lifestyle changes and long-term body transformation, which depends on a lot of factors like genetics, sleep, diet, training, stress, metabolism, those kind of things. And there's so much at play here that honestly, you shouldn't even focus on results first, because it's nearly impossible to have truly realistic expectations when you're just starting. And unless you've been working out for a few years, chances are that you don't even know what realistic progress looks like for you. And since you can't directly control the results, you shouldn't obsess over them. It's a waste of your time. Instead, you should focus on things you have control over: the quality of your sleep, the consistency of your training, your meal planning, those kind of things. And here's an insight that I hope can help you with this whole point that I'm making. The results that you want are hidden behind the quality of your investment. Instead of fixating on the outcome, which you can't control, instead obsess over the quality of your input, which is going to be way more correlated to the results that you're getting. Now, there's another truth that you may not want to hear, but I feel like it's very important. So you will have to be way more patient than you thought you'd have to be, because you're just beginning. And chances are you're not doing things perfectly to get the results that you want. And that's totally fine, but you need to be okay with that. And that's going to take you more time because you're going to make errors. You're going to make mistakes, which is why I'm making this video in the first place. Hopefully so that you don't do as much of them as I did. In the beginning, you should definitely just focus on building habits, building a lifestyle, and then you will get the results that you're looking for. Start by taking better care of your nutrition, sticking to a sleep schedule that makes sense for you and that's, consistent, and learn to enjoy training and to, perform all those different exercises. And this is why I've created the Fitness Autonomy program in the first place, because I wanted people to have all these different modules because it's just not about training. All these other factors of your life are important as well. So that's the program. In any case, you can check it out in the description if you want. And these types of results, I think, are the ones people should be aiming at. Sleeping better, feeling better, thinking clearer, not having this constant brain fog. These are the first benefits you will experience, and in my opinion, they're the most meaningful ones. Sure, defined biceps and six-pack, it looks great, but having a clear mind throughout your day, thanks to exercise, is much more useful. So to wrap it up, if you're just getting started, understand that results isn't as important as consistently getting better at your craft and what you're doing. So as always, I hope this helps. Trust the process.